Rogue. At this time, we sadly can confirm that a 1.5-year-old girl and a 16-year-old boy lost their lives. Several victims, well, we know at least 3, were transported to area hospitals, with all of them being children. The one remaining child is in critical but stable condition. We cannot emphasize enough the importance of wearing seatbelts and of properly restraining children. As you can see, there is a child seat in the yard not far from where that car came to a rest. There is help at the police department and all fire departments for anyone so that they can safely transport a child.
Can you tell us how many people were in the car again, and how many children there were, and how many adults again?
We believe there were 6 people in the car, 2 adults, 2 juveniles, and 2 toddlers.
Okay. And any idea of how this crash happened?
That is what our investigators are working to understand. They're talking to witnesses. They're looking for any video that might be out there. We're appealing to anyone who saw this crash or its aftermath, or anyone who may have information about it at all, to contact us.
How do you believe they all knew each other?
It's unclear as to what the relationship is between the passengers in the vehicle. That's part of the investigation.
And just based on what you see, I mean, based on what the investigators see, do you believe that speed was a factor in this crash?
That's something, that's part of the information that they're gathering. Many calculations and evidence and witness testimony has to be taken into consideration before we can definitively determine that.
You said 2 juveniles and 2 children. Do we have the ages of the other juvenile and the other child?
At this time, no. We're not able to confirm the identities yet of everyone involved. All of this they're all moving parts in this investigation.
Were the adults restrained, and what is their status?
That's also part of the investigation. At this time, I can't confirm.
But are the adults badly injured? I mean, you say the juveniles are in the hospital, but what about the adults?
All of those that were transported with injuries were children.
Okay. What about, do we know that an adult at the wheel at the time, or was a teenager?
At this time, it's unclear who the driver was. So our investigators are again working to determine what the details were that led up to the crash and exactly who was where and how they were involved.
I guess this looks like you guys have been out here since 1 o'clock. Any idea? It's going to be a long process here, I would imagine.
Yes, our investigators and forensics teams will be out here for several hours to help answer some of these questions.
Is there only one other person at the hospital, you said?
There is a toddler who is in critical but stable condition.
And that's the only person still in the hospital?
Yes, sir.
Can you just say a word on behalf of the department, or I don't want to use the word family because you haven't made clear how they know each other, but just say a word on behalf of all the people in this car and how devastating this must be for all their friends and family to be hearing about.
Absolutely. It's devastating anytime people are hurt in a crash, and especially to lose 2 children in a crash. It's a tragedy. It is. As I mentioned earlier, we are unsure about the relationship between each of the passengers in the vehicle, but it's nothing short of a tragedy.
And again, you're emphasizing the fact that safety seats and things are always available to the public, right?
Absolutely. We know you've heard it 1,000 times to wear your seatbelt. Make sure that before your car moves that everyone is properly restrained. And if you need help with car seats, they're difficult to get in sometimes. Both the police department and the fire department has resources available to help you properly restrain children.
In this case, I mean, they had a car seat. It just wasn't installed right.
Well, that's part of the investigation at this time, but as you can see, that car seat is in the front yard of the home where the car came to a rest.
Were people ejected, and who was ejected, if you can explain?
It's unclear who was ejected at this time, but several of the people in the vehicle, were ejected.
Do we know if the child safety seat was put in place, or was it loosely in there, or was it installed improperly, or we don't know that?
That's all part of the investigation. We can't confirm at this time, but our detectives are working all aspects of this crash to understand what led up to the crash, what happened during the crash, and what happened immediately afterwards.
Was there an issue with speed in this neighborhood? Like, I mean, from the looks of this crash, it's pretty violent. It looked to me that they were not clearly driving the speed limit around it. So, I mean,
It's unclear what their speed was. I know that that is a calculation that they need to gather a lot of information in order to make. So I'm very sure that at some point in this investigation that information will become available. But as you can see, it was a violent crash. The car is totaled. It's again a tragedy that 2 children are no longer with us. Any other questions?
You want to give the names for us?
Yes. Okay. The 1.5-year-old girl, her name is Wilaya Waller. That's spelled Williah. Last name Waller. Date of birth. Yes. Her date of birth